And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Brampton Observatory channel. Just going to be on for a short time tonight, testing YouTube and our stream there. Was on last night, but not live. Was doing some imaging. I was not especially happy with the results. I was using a different filter last night. Was using the L Pro filter. Tonight we have the L Extreme, the L Enhance filter on tonight, and I'll explain a little bit about those on a upcoming video and live session. So that's why you see sort of a green cast over the image, and we're currently looking at the very bright star Capella. I'll just bring it up here on Starry Night. So a little bit of information about Capella. It is actually a double star, which means it's a star orbiting another star. That's one of the reasons why it looks so bright, although when we look at it through a telescope, certainly at a wide field telescope like I'm using right now, you can see it looks like just a single star. It's, as you can see, the brightest star in this constellation. It's located about 42 light years away from our sun and has a visual magnitude of 0.1. So that is actually very bright. As for its position in the sky, you can see here on Starry Night Pro, the right ascension, declination, all that great information. Position in space again gives us at 42 light years, and some other information there as well. Any other data? Again, temperature, luminosity equal to 162 suns. Just some great information. And that's the one great thing about planetary programs, the observatory programs like Starry Night Pro and some of the others out there that I mentioned in the past, Stellarium, which is free. You can actually have a look at the night sky and orient yourself to what you're looking at and get an idea of where everything is in the night sky. Mars is still fairly high up in the sky, but Mars is moving away from us now, and as we get more and more into summer, it'll be less visible. As you can see here, Orion, the Orion Nebula that we've looked at before, is fairly low in the sky. Excuse me, and there are not going to be a lot of nights left to view Orion in the night sky. Later on in the summer, it'll be rising early in the morning, just before sunrise. Another great target to look at, and we'll definitely through the summer have a look, but with a different camera, at our old friend up here, the moon, which is just up here. There are some interesting objects, but with this particular camera and the amount of moonlight, even with a filter, it would be not very good to look at tonight. We are going to move around a little bit in the sky before it gets too late. We're going to try to have a quick look at the Pleiades M45, which is known as the Seven Sisters. I'm sure everybody's heard of those. And other targets that are not on the side of the moon where we're looking away. We might be a little late in the evening before we can get a look at those. I'm not sure I'll still be on at that point. But another night definitely we will. I did take some images of these the other day. M51, the Whirlpool Galaxy, M101, the Pinwheel Galaxy. As I said, unfortunately, they didn't turn out very good. I think I might have had some dust or dirt or something. When I say dirt, I mean very small specks on my filter that I was using. It's a broadband filter, basically a light pollution filter, and it did not bring out the best of the objects that we looked at. I did shoot another group of images for the rosette, hoping to get something better than I had, always looking to improve. That didn't work out either. Welcome to astronomy and astrophotography. There are days when things go really well and you get some great images, and then sometimes other days, not so much. That was one of those days last night. We've had a great run of clear weather, and that's been great for doing observing. Unfortunately, the moon is getting brighter in the sky, and that has a tendency to wash things out a bit. I mean, as I've mentioned many times before, I live in a Bortle 8 light pollution zone, which is very high. Put the moon on top of that, and imaging does become difficult. So anyway, that's a look at Capella. We're going to swing over now and try to have a look at M45, the Seven Sisters, before it gets below my visual horizon. Again, I'm surrounded by houses and all kinds of other obstructions, so we'll try to get a quick look at it. I did have it up earlier, and it looked actually pretty good. Go to M45. Come on, iPad, not wanting to cooperate. There we go. So we're going to do a go to. So we are up on there now. I'm not sure if anyone's in the chat with me or not. I'll have a quick look here. Nope, not yet. So this will be available to watch on the YouTube channel, and hopefully next time you'll tune in to one of my shows. If you do like what you see, please subscribe. I'd appreciate it. It's very helpful, and we're able to continue this. I'm doing this all for outreach. I am a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, and thought it would be great to do some astronomy outreach for the masses out there who may not have a telescope or are just getting interested in astronomy. To give you an idea of some of the issues that can come up and some of the great rewards when you're out there and doing your imaging or visual observing. Some great things to see in the night sky. There's also some other great programs out there that you can watch that are very educational. I just actually finished watching one before I signed on here, and that's Astronomy by the Bay. They have a YouTube and Facebook channel. Very educational, entertaining, great bunch of guys down in New Brunswick, Canada, and I hope you'll tune into their show as well. They're usually on 7 o'clock on Sunday nights. We hope to actually have a little better schedule, or more regular schedule for live observing anyway. Of course, we're always going to be weather dependent. As I said, we've had kind of a great run of clear skies here. Unfortunately, like I said, the moon is up, but that won't stop us. In the background, well, we're about to switch over. All right, so now we're looking at the Seven Sisters. Clearly you can see those very bright stars If I were to do some long-term imaging of these, you'd start to see a blue nebulosity around those stars and in and around those stars. These are very young stars, as young stars go. They are only 1,000,000 years or so old, and that's why they would appear blue. This is a great visual target if you have reasonably dark skies. I know where I live, I used to be able to see them a lot better visually than I am now. But even with a pair of binoculars or a small telescope, you can actually really pick out these stars. And they typically, I can show you them here in the starry night. Whoops, wrong button. There we go. So M45 are the Pleiades. So they're currently located in the lower western sky. They're a fair ways below the moons, but so they're not getting quite as much bright light. And you can see Mars is just above them. So this is kind of what you would see after processing with a small telescope or a large telescope as well. You can see the nebulosity around these stars. You visually would not be able to see that either through a telescope, really. You might catch with a larger telescope a little bit of what looks like a haze, grayish haze around them. And again, that's because our eyes are not tuned to see that type of color in the night sky. But these actually are the stars you'll see that are represented on the Subaru car. That's what it is. If you never knew before what those stars represented, it does represent the Seven Sisters. And these are the brightest. They're actually more than 7, but they really, when they say the Seven Sisters, they're talking about the 7 brightest of those stars that are located in that nebula. So Pleiades is an open cluster, as they call it. In terms of description, basically they're young stars. They're within, like I say, about 1,000,000 years old, a little more. Position in the sky, again, through right ascension, declination. All of that information is available in your planetarium software. And does it give us a distance? I always forget the distance. Blah blah blah. I see. Position in space. Other data. Apparent magnitude, they are quite bright at 1.37. There we go. So these stars are approximately 400 light years away from Earth. So that means the light we're seeing tonight in this young group of stars started traveling towards us 400 years ago. Really fascinating. Telescopes and even just looking at the night sky is like using a time machine, as I've always said. It's fascinating. Can actually start to see a little bit of the nebulosity around these guys as we look at them through the filter. This filter is designed to knock out light pollution and other bands of light that can potentially interfere and bring out more nebulosity. It's not the greatest filter for looking at galaxies, although, or imaging galaxies. It's not a broadband filter, which means it has many bands of light available through the filter. This particular filter is meant to block out a lot of those types of light that normally cause interference and noise. So that is the Pleiades. Some other interesting targets that we would want to have a look at maybe tonight. Again, this camera is not designed for planetary imaging, so we won't go through there. I think we can still have a look at Orion. Let's find out if it's below horizon or not. And I am controlling the telescope with an iPad. I have some software that allows me to do that. You can also, through this program, Starry Night Pro and Stellarium, control your telescope as well. I like using the iPad. I find it's very useful and small, and doesn't take up too much room on my rather small table here. So let's go to and see what we get. So what do we know about the Orion Nebula? Well, it's a Messier object. It's M42. It was its designation. Its description basically is in darker skies, it is you're visually able to see, as they say here, sort of a gray fuzzy patch. Position in the sky right now, it's showing its current position, azimuth, altitude. Position in space, so Orion, the nebula itself, is approximately 1,600 light years away, which means the light from this object started traveling to us that we're seeing tonight 1,600 years ago. Let's do a quick exposure of Orion. We'll do a quick 10-second just to get it. We may have to center it up in the telescope. Sometimes my go-to is not dead on, so I use the secondary software here to center things up, which is the ASI Air Pro software that I run through an emulator for Android. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm gonna center this a bit. We'll go to here. We're gonna go to M45. This is a list of all the Messier objects. One interesting thing to do is a Messier marathon, which can take you literally all night, and go through and visually observe as many of these objects you can, or image them if you're so inclined. Okay, so there's the Orion Nebula, and we're going to do a go-to, and that should center us up a little more. Now the first image out of here, typically the stars are askew because it hasn't really, the mount hasn't settled quite yet when it does the imaging. It does say it's centered, and hopefully that will actually have us centered. This filter is ideal for this type of target. There, as you can see, it kind of goes askew. So let's just do another shot, and that should straighten things out. I may try to actually image this one more time tomorrow, although I'm not sure I'll be live. I know sometimes it can be, there we go, kind of boring just sitting there watching the same image over and over again for people. That's why we're kind of moving around a bit tonight for a little while. And so yeah, there you can see Orion. Probably try to play a little bit with the histogram here, make it a little clearer. Oops, a little too much. Here we go. So there you can see it's a little darker. And if we kind of zoom in here, you can see this very bright area of the nebula. And there, although it's a little bit hard to see in this image, there are 4 stars in here, and it's called the trapezium. These are stars that have been born through this nebula. This nebula is basically a collection of interstellar space gas and dust that's come together, and this is a star producing factory. The sun itself was made in a nebula probably very similar to this, and basically moved out of the nebula as the gas and dust that was in there is used up, and resides in its current position today. However, keep in mind everything, and I mean everything in the universe, is constantly in motion. The sun, the moon, the earth, the stars, although we don't see the stars moving as much as planets through the night sky, we see the stars moving mainly because the earth is rotating. So that's their apparent movement. So keep that in mind. You know, we're on basically a big spaceship moving through the galaxy. Our sun orbits through the galaxy and around the galaxy. Where we are now is not where were 100,000, 200,000, a million years ago. So fun stuff. We're always in motion, although we don't feel it. Obviously, the Earth is rotating, I think, somewhere around 600 miles per hour. So we don't feel that, but definitely, and we wouldn't want to feel that. Keep in mind, as you're standing out tonight looking up, everything around you is moving. That's Orion. I'm gonna try to brighten Orion up a little bit here. Let's bring it up to 130. We'll image a little longer. Let's do a 60-second, just to give you an idea. When you're imaging, it's really important to get as many images as you can, but also if you have a good polar alignment, and my polar alignment is actually pretty good tonight. I made some adjustments this afternoon, and I am just so close to almost dead on, but I still have to actually raise my latitude about a half a degree, and it can be, with my particular mount, it's not so easy to do that. Certainly doing it at night is near to impossible, so I have to do it in the day and then check the alignment and hope that I was close. And by judging from tonight's alignment, I was actually pretty darn close. So I'll make one more tiny adjustment tomorrow, and hopefully it'll be pretty much dead on. The reason you want a good polar alignment is for long exposure photography. You want that mount tracking the sky properly. If you don't, you're going to get stars that are distorted and oblong and not looking very good. So you can see the longer exposure really brightened it up. So we'll adjust that a bit on the histogram, bring the black point up a little more. So now you can see a huge difference. It's still a little bright. Could probably bring that down just a notch or two. So you can see the difference between the two images. Some pretty amazing differences actually, with just a slightly longer exposure time. And we brought the gain down a little bit, but all of this gas is nebulosity around the main nebula itself. You can see some more over here. Everything is definitely brighter, and yeah, it looks pretty good. I can see a little bit of stretching in my stars, which is a result of my polar alignment not being dead on. Actually, it's a little more off than it was last night in one direction, so that's in the latitude. So that's why things are looking a little oblong at in the stars. But overall, decent image. You can go even longer than that. This is a very bright object. There's arguments both ways to go longer or shorter. With more images, less time. I'm using the Hyperstar on this telescope, which is an attachment that allows me to shoot at approximately f2, which is very fast imaging. So trying to get the same amount of data is roughly doubles it, sometimes a little more depending on how long your image is, or how long your exposure is, I should say. So that's Orion. We can kind of play around with the histogram a little more. Oops. And bring that down a little more. But as you can see, as I bring that down a little more, I start to lose some of this. This is one single image. You can do what's called live stacking here. I haven't used that a lot, which stacks image on top of image on top of image. Probably experiment with that a little bit in the future, especially for live broadcasting. Other than that, I don't really see much purpose in that live stacking. I prefer to take all my images and then stack them myself and do all of the processing in PixInsight and Photoshop. PixInsight is a program that I'll do a demo of in the future. Great program for processing images, astrophotography images. It is a very complex program. There are some simple functions within it that will give you some decent results. There are people who are gobs more knowledgeable than I am with PixInsight, who use it very, very well, and I'm unfortunately not one of those guys. Not at the moment, anyway. Just checking the stream. Looks good. I'm not, as I say, the best. I'm still learning PixInsight. I would love to take a course on it locally. I know there is a huge amount of functionality and touch-ups that can make your images look even better. Typically I do most of the processing in PixInsight. Occasionally I'll take it into Photoshop for just some touch-ups for vibrance and then maybe some curves and things like that. But generally speaking, I use the PixInsight to process the image for the most part in its entirety. Just gonna do a longer one to see if it's my mount off or how much, because I was getting great 120-second, so 2-minute exposures a while ago. So I'm pretty sure it's because that adjustment I made this afternoon, I got closer, but I went from needing to raise or needing to lower, I should say, the latitude on my mount by about 1 degree, to now I've gone just below maybe about half a degree or close to that. Also, my adjustment looks like it wasn't quite on, or it could be the mount not tracking quite properly. It's an older mount now. It's a CGX Pro. I would love to replace it with another mount. Excuse me. And maybe one day in the future when I have gobs of money to do that, I will. The mount that I would like to have is well over $12,000 Canadian. So yeah, that's not exactly immediately in my future, unless someone out there wants to send me one or lend me one. I'd be happy to promote that mount. And it's a Skywatcher mount, actually, the Pro R8, I think it's called. There are some other mounts out there as well that are really good, and having a really good mount is critical, especially in astrophotography, for your tracking. Mine definitely needs a little bit of work. I know some of my clutches are not gripping properly, so I'm going to end up probably replacing those as an interim fix. These are just knobs that you twist to lock things down, so it has a tendency to drift a little. That actually is. Let's play with the histogram a bit, see what we get. Again, bring our black point up a little more. So you can see a lot more nebulosity with that. My stars, not horrible, but I mean, this is something you can actually correct out here. I'm getting a little more star streak, so yeah, my alignment is definitely not as good as it was last night, but for doing this tonight, it will suffice. And I'll go back out and try to adjust that small degree that it's off, which is accounting for that little bit of streaking on this side. So that's Orion. What else do we have that we could have a look at here? M78 is just above Orion. Let's have a look at that. It is a diffuse nebula. It's part of the Orion nebula, actually. Let's do a search. It's a little bit higher. This one may be a little harder to see, but let's have a look and see if we can get it. So, oops. What do we know about M78? Well, we know its Messier designation is M78. belongs to the same cloud of gas and dust as the main Orion Nebula. It has two companion nebulae, NGC 2067 and 2071. All three are what are called reflection nebula. M78 is, in fact, the brightest reflection nebula. It's visible with binoculars, but best seen through a telescope. Notice the fan-like wisp of M78 along with two prominent 10th magnitude stars that lie in the center of the nebula. Position in space, of course, it is part of Orion, so it's 1600 light years away. So let's have a look at M76. We'll do a quick preview. Let's do a 10-second preview. See what we can see. So yeah, that is normal because of the histogram. We're going to put it back on auto, and we're going to try to center it up a bit. We may not see much of anything. This is sometimes difficult to pick out with single frames. Let's try it a little more. Let's try 30 seconds and see what we get here. Probably only going to be live for another few minutes tonight. I might come on live tomorrow night. If I do, I'll certainly post the event on YouTube. We're going to, unfortunately, my software that I have right now only allows me to broadcast to either Facebook Live or YouTube, not both. I have a fair amount of bandwidth in my home, but I'm not sure it would really be enough to do dual streaming, but we may try it at some point. We'll see. Okay, I'm gonna try to do a center. So we may be off a little bit here. Let's try M78. I'd love to go to a target like Ring Nebula. Ring Nebula is not visible or even rising right now till well after midnight. And 78, where are we? Later on in the summer we'll be able to do the Ring Nebula. 78. Oops, overshot. There we go. Okay, so it took us to M79. Obviously my clicking was not right on. So we'll let it do its thing and we'll go back to 78. This actually happened to me last night as well. I was clicking on one, on one and then another. I think it's low M79, so we're going to cancel that. Go back to M78. There we go. Yeah, I think M79 was well below the roof of my observatory. Sometimes it's hard for me to see. I turn the light on in here so that you can see the screen better, or me. So yeah, that's centered right off. Wow, that's pretty good. This first image that it kicks out will have really skewy stars, as I said before. And then we'll do a better one to see. Yeah, so you can start to see some of the nebulosity. Let's do a 30-second exposure and see what we can get here. And once again, if you're just kind of tuning into this, the green cast on the screen is caused by the filter that we're using, which is the Optilong L-Enhance filter. So let's see how this guy pops out. Yeah, so not too bad actually. So you can see some of the nebulosity starting to come through. We could probably bring the gain up a little higher and see if we can pick up a little more of that. And we'll go with a 60-second exposure. If I took multiple images of this and stacked them all together and did the post-processing, you'd definitely see more of the nebulosity, but you can certainly see it starting to show through in the image. Nebulas, except for ones that are really bright, excuse me, like Orion and some of the others, are not the most fun and interesting things to look at when you're looking at just one image of them. So we've got about 14 seconds and counting. We'll see. Probably have to adjust a little bit after this one comes up. Okay, yeah, it comes out a little better, not a heck of a lot. Again, unless I were doing a lot of images, you're really not going to see a whole heck of a lot here. Let's see maybe one more target before I sign off for tonight. Unfortunately, I don't think my galaxies are in position yet. The Leo triplet, I'd love to do that for you tonight, which is 3 galaxies close together, but I think it is not high enough. I think my house would kind of block it here, because that's roughly where my bathroom window is. Definitely will do that later on in another video. We may be able to get a shot. I did these the other night, the cat's eye. They actually looked not too bad visually as I was doing it, but when I get into processing, there were all kinds of issues that kind of popped up. So let's have a look and see if we can get the whirlpool. So that's M51. Let's go over there, and that'll be our last one for tonight. Unfortunately, I do have to work tomorrow. Where are we here? Yeah. Just gonna double check the position. Yeah, okay. We'll give it a try. And we'll go to. So we're just slewing over to the whirlpool, which is really an interesting galaxy to look at. It actually has a satellite galaxy. This is part of a collision of galaxies that's happening. And you can see this bright one over here is actually colliding and locked gravitationally to M51. And as you can see, we'll have a look and see if we can see it through the telescope. Some information about M51. It's a Messier object again. Its designation is M51, and it is 37 million light years away, so not exactly in our backyard. So let's see if we can look at a galaxy that's 37 million light years away. So I'm doing actually, let's cancel that. Let's do a 30-second exposure to start with to see if we have it centered up. And to see if it's actually in our window here. And it's coming up now. I see our camera has reached -20. And I think, yeah, that was what I was afraid of. I think the roof of the house next door to me is kind of interfering. I'm going to have a quick look out the door here and see how much is in the way. Interestingly enough, it looks like it's my own roof that is kind of interfering. So let's have a look and see if we can center it a little better. Might be just enough room to clear. Might be just enough room. Yeah, when it has to auto center, sometimes more than once, that's problematic. Later in the evening, it will be higher in the sky. Unfortunately, I won't be on at that point, but we will. Definitely, as it moves higher in the sky. Well, there we go. It says it's centered. It's going to shoot a quick image. We'll see how that works out. Oh, okay. Well, that kind of worked. So you can see it in the center there. Of course, we're going to shoot an image where the stars are not moving, or the mount is not moving. So that's a 30-second exposure. And we'll see how that looks. Okay, well, again, this is a single image. It's only 30 seconds. But you can see the comparison of the image. You can see it's a spiral face-on galaxy. Here's that satellite galaxy that's in collision with it that I mentioned earlier. And you can start to see some of the arms. Let's try a slightly longer exposure. Let's try a 1 minute exposure and see if we can get a little more detail. If I zoom in on it, you can see it a little more clearly, the image forming. So we'll wait for 1 minute and see what we get. And this is one of those images that maybe at some point we can try the live stacking on and see if it starts to bring out more and more detail as it stacks the images. My telescope is actually capable of a much closer view than this, but using the Hyperstar, it basically creates a wide field image. It brings the focal length down to approximately 680, which its usual focal length for this telescope is 3910. So that's 3910 magnification. So it basically almost quarters it. But that's designed purposely so that you can actually get faster exposures, use less actual time to get the same amount of data down. The trade-off, of course, yeah, you can start to see some of the trees and stuff here and my roof. But it does give you a little bit better image, you can see. Obviously, I'm not going to pursue this image for multiple imaging tonight because it's not in a good position. But again, you can see the galaxy itself. If I were to image it with many, many more frames and in darker, clearer skies, you would see a lot more detail in there than you're getting from this 1 60-second image. But again, this is an object you can see through a small telescope. It won't look like this. It'll look more or less like a smudge. Much better galaxy to image that would be very large even with this particular imaging setup would be Andromeda. Unfortunately, Andromeda is in my northwest sky, and it is much lower than the house behind me, so I'm not able to image it right now. Anyway, I think I'm going to call it an evening, and I want to thank you for watching the video. There was no real announcement in advance that I'd be live tonight, except on the Facebook channel, which is where you can also look for updates and other information and live broadcasts to come. If you do happen to tune into this video and you enjoyed it or have any questions, feel free to ask, and you can ask questions on the Facebook page, the Brampton Observatory channel. And I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to this channel to help us to make it better and keep it going. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.